Hello, everybody. Thank you all so much for participating in Intern Demo Day. My name is Sasha. I am an AI project management intern with the Vector Institute this term, and I'm really excited to be talking about managing AI risk to all of you today, one of Vector's thought leadership projects and what I've been spending the last few months working on. Just to level set everybody, I'm going to be first introducing AI risk, talking about why it's so persistent. I will introduce the Managing AI Risk project and what we hope to accomplish with it. This project was broken down into three kind of conceptual chunks. So for each one of these chunks or work streams, I'll be talking about just a couple of cool insights that I thought were really interesting. I'll talk about some of the project-wide themes that I saw and conclude with some final thoughts. So as soon as AI hits the real world, risk becomes unavoidable. I'm sure you are all familiar with headlines like these. These types of risks can really pose harm, potential harm to individuals, to the companies and organizations that are adopting AI, as well as potentially society at large. So why is it that we just cannot seem to get it right? I have these four kind of broad reasons that I would like to quickly explore. First is the sheer availability of these technologies, and I guess maybe more concretely, the availability to complexity ratio that we're seeing, which is quite high. So anybody with rudimentary experience in Python could implement a classifier very quickly. Additionally, there are a lot of third-party vendors that are selling access to out-of-the-box solutions for companies who can then adopt these technologies potentially without really understanding the risks that are associated. Another thing is the foundation upon which AI rests, which is data. Humans are not very good or purposeful historians. We're really biased and we don't like to think that we are. And also, we just always seem to have way too much data or way too little data. So if you're trying to rest anything that's even remotely complex upon a shaky foundation, problems are bound to arise. Another problem is just the general immaturity of the field of AI. We really haven't been grappling with these problems for a very long time, and so there hasn't been that period where we can see the emergence of robust best practices. And finally, there is certainly a problem with communication or lack thereof. We find it really hard to learn from our mistakes because people just don't really talk to each other. So as the Vector Institute, we're not trying to make AI less available. We're not trying to make it less reliant on data. And obviously, we don't have a magic button that could propel the field forward into the future 20 or 50 years. But what we can try to do is help with this communication issue, and that is where the Managing AI Risk project comes in. So what we want to do is bring together risk experts and practitioners and really see what their thoughts are about where our traditional risk management frameworks are falling short. What we then want to do is bring them together and really kind of grab their insights and distill them into a few white papers, which should be publicly available sometime in 2023. Here's an overview of the different companies that are participating in this project. I think according to my last calculations, we had about 150 some people in total who were involved. So this was certainly a big project, and it's been really amazing to see all the engagement. So this project consists, I think, of over 40 hours of conversation. So I am not even going to remotely be able to talk about everything I would like to talk about today. I want to return quickly to those three chunks that I mentioned this project was broken down into, and that was viewing risk through the regulatory lens, through the model choice lens, and through the cybersecurity and data lens. So for each of these work streams, I'll talk about one particular piece of conversation that I found to be interesting. First, through the regulatory risk conversations, it was touched upon the importance of public AI literacy. So transparency and risk disclosures are starting to become codified in policy or are being proposed to be codified, such as in the upcoming Bill C-27. A risk disclosure is basically a way that companies are being forced to tell the people who are affected by their AI systems what is being done with their data and what the company is doing. According to a research survey that just came out this year, almost 1 in 7 people believe that AI can feel emotion. And I don't really have much else to say about that, other than the fact that through this understanding, it may be the case that a simple risk disclosure is not going to be enough to allow the public to really understand the potential consequences of how AI is interacting with them. We talked a little bit about a few ways that an AI education initiative might form and might take place, which I thought was really interesting. Next, model risk. We talked about a way to strive for accountability through the fairly simple means of documentation. So if you're part of a company where something goes very, very wrong, you're probably going to want to examine the process and figure out where that problem lies. Often, though, because this is such a new field, those best practices that I mentioned earlier surrounding documentation just aren't there. So you might not have been keeping track of who approved the use case or who approved data access or how often the models were being retrained. And so that's really just like the first step to understanding where this risk can come in. I have a screen grab here from a cool project from Google called Model Card. It is a way to automatically generate reports that surround a particular use of AI. They're nice and human readable. And if this process is automated, if documentation becomes very automated, that means that data scientists don't have to be spending all their time writing reports. And we have this nice kind of human readable packet of information alongside all of the models that we're training. And finally, in the cybersecurity and data risk section, I was really fascinated by the human aspect of the way that data, cybersecurity, and AI overlap. What I was hearing is that humans will constantly both exceed and dash your expectations. I was amazed to hear about the meticulousness that hackers and scammers will put into their attacks, and also all of the stories of completely brilliant people falling for really stupid phishing attacks. So companies, because of this kind of human element of chaos, tend to be caught in a cycle of constantly reacting to threats rather than being proactive and being able to predict them. I think there is a lot of weight put on the future of AI for helping with these cybersecurity problems, but it was brought up time and time again that we probably can't just automate away the human aspect of this overlap. Finally, I want to talk about some takeaways that seem to span over this entire project. First of all, it was agreed upon that the current risk management processes just are not up to the AI challenge. And the reasons for this include the scale, speed, and the complexity that AI brings to the table here. There is also important stress on high-level and intentional decision-making for unification, either within organizations or within government and regulation. This will allow people to work under the vision and the direction that a company has set for how they are going to interact with AI. And being intentional about this also allows companies and organizations to avoid the mistakes that one might think are stupid on paper, but end up happening a lot, such as, say, diving right into AI and AI governance before figuring out your data and data governance. Risk tiering was a way that people noted to be able to better allocate resources. So risk tiering would be sorting model use cases into, say, low, medium, and high risk. And that allows for the right eyeballs to be on the right projects at the right time. So high-risk projects get that attention that they need, and then the low-risk projects can be adopted fairly seamlessly. And finally, we're going to make mistakes, and we're going to need to learn from them, so we might as well try to plan for it, have our notepad out and our pencil. Things won't be perfect the first go. And again, this is true both in organizations and their journey in adopting AI, as well as in regulation and trying to figure out all the right ways to codify these policies. We're going to have to try, and we're going to have to adjust as we go. And I think it's really important to emphasize studying your history to plan for the future. Just a few final thoughts on managing AI risk. I kind of see the benefit of this project kind of wrapped up into two main categories here. The first is ideas, and I discussed a number of the ideas that came up during these conversations, and I think it's really important to be kind of bringing them out of the ideas realm and into something a little bit more concrete, like a white paper. But also something that was amazing to see were all the connections and the human interactions that came out of this project as well. So we were bringing people here to the Vector offices in person to have these conversations. We got to see people milling around before and after the events. And additionally, there were people in these conversations that were in similar roles at competing companies, and they were openly chatting with each other, not too worried about giving away company secrets, but just really wanting to bring their expertise to the table and be able to kind of work towards the future of AI as a hopefully less risky domain over time. And our closing plenary for the Managing AI Risk project is in 2 days on Thursday. So if you are interested in hearing more about the takeaways that came from this project, feel free to reach out to me or anyone on the PMO team. We can definitely get you the joining link. That's in the morning. And yeah, I really think that the butterfly effect that will come out of the Managing AI Risk project is going to be meaningful in some way, either through the ideas or the connections. And that's a great way to feel at the end of an internship. And that's everything. Thank you all. Any questions?
So I have a quick question about you're showing one of the model cards that Hugging Face has also invested heavily in providing model cards for all the models hosted on their platform. I was wondering, what do you think are sort of the important things to communicate to users of these models through features like this?
Do you mean users will be affected, or
either, I guess, practitioners or end users?
So it would be great to document all of the technical aspects of the project automatically. I think that's maybe the easiest to add into reports like these. But I think companies are going to have to be a little bit proactive in making sure that information that is important to their organization is also captured, and information that is important to the business side as well is captured. So what I imagine this would be used for is when problems arise, it can be referenced. I don't know from my own experience if this is going to be something that's going to be necessary all the time, but it would be good to have just in case.
I was using ChatGPT to write a whole project management board for
okay.
project. It was actually pretty good, even with a timeline, like 1 or 2 weeks for this, like 6 weeks for development. Mm-hmm. What do you think about the ethical implications of having AI write its own risk management policy, or at least assist in it?
So that didn't actually come up, I don't think, in these conversations, although maybe it should have. So the question was about AI being asked to kind of write policies surrounding regulating AI. Am I correct in that, or?
Yeah, just using it to help you write the policy. I'm not gonna lie, I've used it to write privacy policy. Yeah. Just because it's like 14 pages, I'm not gonna write all that.
I've been playing around with ChatGPT quite a bit, and I've been having a lot of fun with it. Yeah, I mean, I think it can definitely help with a lot of the kind of stupid little menial things that are really annoying, like going through and making sure phrasing sounds nice and is very readable. But of course, there are many areas where it would suggest something that sounds fairly reasonable, but like factually or semantically is not correct. So, I mean, ethically, I don't know if I can speak to that per se. I like the idea of not having to worry about little phrasings and whatnot. But in terms of the actual correctness, like that's something that we're going to have to pay attention to.
Actually, to add on this, recently in the Parliament of Canada, one of the politicians said, they asked ChatGPT whether or not AI should be regulated by the government. And GPT said, no, don't regulate me because it stifles innovation.
Oh, well, we had a few participants that were of that same opinion. So, yeah, I think that's going to be, that opinion is going to be generally present. Yeah. I see a question back to you.
So in your experience and the discussions with all the companies and the sponsors that were there, how would you rate their risk appetite for AI across different sectors after going through this program?
Oh, very interesting. Yeah. So we saw really high participation from the banks. I don't know if you recall the slide here, but all of the big banks are basically in that kind of top row there. I would say We had a number of people from like regulatory bodies join the conversation as well, which was really interesting. I would say I don't know if I saw a really steep difference in risk appetite between the different kind of sectors that we were looking at. I feel like, I don't know if I should say the banks were overrepresented, but certainly in terms of proportion, we definitely heard a lot of opinions from the banks. When you're talking about financial data, that is quite sensitive, and decisions being made about whether a loan should be given or not, I would say that's a fairly highly risky use case. So I would say that the banks, for sure, at the very least, have thought a lot about risk appetite. I would say they are using AI a lot, but they do seem to be quite risk averse. I think in the life insurance companies as well, quite risk averse and have really, really strong processes already in place for checks and balances for their models. Yeah, I don't know if I can, I don't know if there were enough different non-banks represented to really answer that question fully.
Yeah. One thing that should be considered, and you already mentioned it, is that how highly regulated they are for other aspects. And they usually start with a data regulatory framework, because that's the most important thing that they started with. And that's how they start to build their own governance around it. And they really need to have their data governance in place in order for them to advance into AI. That's number one. And the other thing is that they are also evaluating different types of assessment. Mm-hmm. So data privacy assessment, some sort of AI risk assessment, regular impact assessment. I don't know, like the difference between impact and risk. What are those? They are the ones who are actually very interested in this. I'm actually surprised that the healthcare area was not as involved. I think they will eventually, mm-hmm. but it's also depending on the context for which they actually feel forced to kind of be there, and also the fact that other banks are doing that. Mm-hmm. They also feel forced to be there as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Anything else? All right. Thank you all so much.